Altcoin holders, listen up. Can we actually trust this market reversal, or are we just going to continue going down in a couple days? I'm going to share with you guys my thoughts on what happens next for both Bitcoin as well as altcoins, because right now we are still living with a lot of uncertainty. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and let's talk about what I believe is happening next. For the first time in a few weeks, we are finally seeing both Bitcoin and altcoins do well. If we take a look at the last 24 hours, we are seeing the majority of altcoins in the green, with the exception of a few different narratives. Privacy coins were doing exceptionally well despite market conditions, but over the last 24 hours, they are the ones that got hit the most. But then the majority of altcoins are following Bitcoin and are up anywhere from 5 to 10%. Now, the question is this going to hold, or are we just going to go straight back down in just a few days? That is the question I want to try and answer today. First and foremost, we need to look at what Bitcoin just did. The importance you have to put on Bitcoin, in my opinion, is now even bigger than before, because Bitcoin has had its second weekly candle close below the 50-week moving average. So as we can see, we have this first weekly candle close, which was last week, and just over the last few hours, we've had this second weekly candle close, which basically now means that Bitcoin has now been under the 50-week moving average for the better part of the last 2 weeks. And as we are starting this third week below the 50-week moving average, we are seeing a start of a green week with Bitcoin around 87,500. Now, don't get me wrong. I do believe that there is going to be some relief in the markets. If you really think of it, Bitcoin has only been going down since the beginning of October, when we reached $126,000. People were super excited back here, and if we look at what Bitcoin has done ever since then, it's just been a pure chaos, down 36% at the worst when Bitcoin was sitting around $80,000. So it's inevitable, in my opinion, that there is going to be some sort of rally. Bitcoin's not just going to continue plummeting down unless liquidation events continue, but I do think the worst of the liquidations are behind us with that October 10th event. So, with that being the case, and understanding that Bitcoin is going to dictate what altcoins do, this is what I believe is going to happen. I do think that we were able to reach some of the lows that we were in April. It went all the way down to about 80,700 roughly for Bitcoin. That was grabbing some of the liquidity that we had back in the April lows. It didn't go all the way to $75,000. It didn't go below $80,000, which a lot of people thought it would. Right now, we're sitting at $87,000. Now, what I believe is going to happen, if, of course, liquidity conditions permit it, and as we know, we do have some upcoming key events happening in just a few weeks. We have December 1st being quantitative tightening ending, and then on December 10th, we have the FOMC meeting. And as of right now, at the time of me recording this, we still have a 30% chance of a rate cut happening in that December meeting. So things are still looking better in terms of liquidity conditions, with both QT and rate cuts still on the forecast. So with that in mind, and understanding that we have been in major drawdown over the last 4 to 5 weeks, I would be willing to say that Bitcoin is likely going to push up higher given those bullish factors that are happening soon. Now, this doesn't mean that Bitcoin goes to all-time highs just yet. I do think there's a few things that have to happen before we can really say that, Bitcoin's going to make new all-time highs. Because right now we are at 87,000, we're not at 126. So to me, what I believe is likely going to happen is that we are likely going to continue seeing that 50-week moving average come down as the price of Bitcoin is, of course, below it. As it stays below it, that weekly moving average is going to continue coming down. And I do see Bitcoin's price eventually bouncing back towards it. Now, I do not have a crystal ball. I can't tell you that it's going to take, 3 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, or whatever the case may be. But I do think that it lines up well with what's happening in the macroeconomic. But I do think it can line up quite well with what's happening in the coming weeks in terms of a macroeconomic standpoint. So if it does, in fact, take a week or 2 weeks and it lines up with the FOMC meeting, I do still think that Bitcoin is eventually going to make its way back to the 50-week moving average, whether or not it's at, 95,000 or whatever the case may be, because right now that 50-week moving average is sitting at $102,000. So then the pivotal point is going to happen, in my opinion. It's either going to hit that 50-week moving average and go lower and more bearishness is going to happen, or it's going to be able to break above it and turn it back into support before going back up on Bitcoin's price. Now, I just want you guys to, understand that when this happened last time in the last bull market, because it's inevitable, in my opinion, to say that Bitcoin has been in a bull market ever since 2022. You look at, the end of 2022, Bitcoin's at $15,000, and you look at the, Q4 2025 high of 126,000. Bitcoin has literally gone up. If we just take a little bit of time to draw this out, it's up 678%. So to say that Bitcoin hasn't been in a bull market kind of doesn't make sense. Yes, it's not been like the other bull markets with altcoins, but Bitcoin itself still has done almost a 7x. So if you look at 2021, when Bitcoin went from about $10,000 all the way to $65,000, well, if you look at the end of that bull market, you can see that we in fact had 2 weekly candle closes on Bitcoin's price below the 50-week moving average. And as you can see, as a result of that, we continued going lower for the next couple of weeks. So right now, if you look exactly where this would put us back in 2021, we are essentially, if I give you guys a nice arrow here, we are at this weekly candle here. So first weekly candle close below the 50-week moving average, then that second weekly candle close. Then after that, we actually had a bounce week, but then continued lower after the fact. Now, of course, previous price action doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to happen in the future, but I want you guys to realize that even though we lost a 50-week moving average, we did come back to test it as support or resistance just a few weeks later. And if we take a look at that, we lost a 50-week moving average in December 2021, and we were back at the 50-week moving average in March of 2022, which is roughly 3 months after we've lost that support. So if the exact same thing were to happen to Bitcoin, if we take a look at, some of the charts here, let me just remove all of these drawings. If we go to 3 months after Bitcoin has lost the 50-week moving average, 3 months puts us right around here, around the beginning of February, which could again line up with more rate cuts in the future and could also continue lining up with better liquidity conditions if it were to follow what we saw in 2021. Again, I do think that the 50-week moving average is going to be a very tell-all signal. If Bitcoin gets there, I do believe it's more a matter of when and not if. I do think we are going to eventually get back to that 50-week moving average, and then it's going to be a pivotal point in time. What Bitcoin decides to do after that? Now, if we relate that to altcoins, because Obviously, altcoins haven't moved nearly as much as Bitcoin. And if you look at Bitcoin dominance, over the last few weeks, we've actually, lost a little bit on Bitcoin dominance from roughly 60% to now 59%. But again, we have not seen the major moves for these altcoins because we've not seen these major drops for Bitcoin dominance. We saw one back in December of 2017, and we also saw it in March of 2021 during these massive altcoin seasons. Now, the reason for that, in my opinion, is because if we take a look at alts versus Bitcoin, we have not had the end of quantitative tightening just yet. If you look at it, we are now just a few days away from the Fed ending quantitative tightening, which is happening on December 1st. Also going to promote better liquidity conditions, is prime for a rebound in the markets. Given the last 4 to 5 weeks in horrible fear, uncertainty, doubt, and, just pure panic and bearishness across the space, we line it up with the end of quantitative tightening. We could very well see a rebound in altcoins. And the last time alts versus Bitcoin bottomed was actually when the Fed ended quantitative tightening in 2019. So it's now been a very long time since the Fed has been doing quantitative tightening. It's been ongoing ever since April/May of 2022. We can put the balance sheet up here and you can see that really quantitative tightening ended right around April/May of 2022, which essentially marked the top of the altcoins market as well. And then from there, it all went downhill for altcoins. So it is looking quite likely that we are going to get a relief rally in the next few days and weeks to come as we get to that December 1st, quantitative tightening ending, as well as the FOMC meeting. Those should be two bullish events for the markets. And if we take a look at another thing that quantitative tightening has actually brought to the markets in the past, if you look at Bitcoin dominance, which also gives us an idea of what altcoins want to do. Well, let me put this a little bit better so you guys can actually see this. If I put it on the left, and we go into regular charts here, you can see that Bitcoin dominance actually topped out in 2019, right when we had the end of quantitative tightening. So the blue line is the federal balance sheet. It ends right around September 2nd. And during that time, you can see that Bitcoin dominance actually topped out around 70 to 73%. So whether or not that's the case this cycle around, we can see that, Bitcoin dominance is around 59%. The Fed is about to end quantitative tightening. Is that going to be the top of Bitcoin dominance for now? We don't have an answer for that, but obviously if it is, this would obviously mean that altcoins would likely gain dominance on Bitcoin for Bitcoin dominance to go down. And last but not least, I wanted to share this with you guys here because I also believe USDT dominance has reached a very interesting spot for another relief rally, because if you look at the USDT dominance, so basically a stable coin dominance in the market right now, we have reached a key area where over the last about year, we have not been able to break out of that region for USDT dominance, meaning it's a very crucial resistance area. And every time we have seen USDT dominance be up in this red box, it has come down, which has given, crypto, this is Bitcoin as well as alts, an opportunity to breathe and an opportunity to go up as the USDT dominance goes down. So that is another important aspect to look at because, again, remember September of 2024, we see for the next, few months, we had a nice rally into November of 2024 all the way to December. This was your AI, altcoin massive explosion. And then we had a few other times where we came back up here, but every time we came to that red box, we shot right back down for USDT dominance, which is another reason why I believe a relief rally is likely going to happen this time again. Now, looking at some returns currently, it's very, very interesting to look at what Bitcoin has given us in quarter 4 of 2025. Looking at this, we have a negative 24.4% for Bitcoin right now. And if you look at the other years where we had negative Q4s, they have been in bear market years. So if you look at 2022, minus 15%, that's a bear market year. If you look at 2018, minus 42%, another bear market year. If you look at 2014, another bear market year of minus 17%. Now, all of these other years, we have Bitcoin in the green. So it's been a very, very challenging cycle right now. Again, kind of coincides with the liquidity that we're not seeing in the markets yet, that is about to get better in terms of conditions and money coming into the markets. But then you have to play devil's advocate to understand whether or not the 4-year cycle really is a thing in Bitcoin and crypto, or whether or not you're more leaning towards that liquidity cycle. That is something to keep an eye out. But ultimately speaking, I do think that the relief rally is going to happen for the next little while. Bitcoin is eventually going to reach back that 50-week moving average, test it, resistance or support, and that's going to be your next move. And altcoins are likely going to follow Bitcoin, maybe even outperform it, with QT ending in the next few weeks and months. But if Bitcoin decides to turn that 50-week moving average as resistance and shoot back down, your altcoins are unfortunately going to follow suit. So from now until then, I do think there are still a lot of plays that you can make in the altcoin sense. It is all about finding those narratives and rotating. I don't think it's a very good idea to just hold forever right now, especially in these market conditions. I think there are quick plays that can be made. And last but not least, if we look at the current longs versus shorts, we are seeing a lot more longs over the last 24 hours than shorts, which means that people are now content going into long positions. Just a few days ago, there was absolutely no one longing the markets. And if you look at, let's say, the last week, we are still seeing shorts win the battle around $6.5 billion, all the way up to $95,000 for Bitcoin. But we still have quite a bit of longs that we didn't have before, going from 80,000 all the way to the current price. We have about $3 billion in long leverage. So it does mean that longs are slowly but surely coming back. Again, there's going to be more macro data this coming week, so keep your eyes peeled in the markets. If you want to see what I am doing in the crypto space, have a look at the first link in the description below. That's our private community. And on top of that, if you are looking to stay safe during holiday season, you're navigating the crypto space, you're navigating different websites, absolutely check out Surfshark as a VPN. They're currently having a Black Friday deal. I am using Surfshark. It's been for the better part of the last, 3-4 years at this point. Absolutely love it because you can have unlimited devices connected to your account. It's not like other VPNs where you can only have a certain amount of devices. I have all of my devices connected under my one account, and I'm paying $2.50 a month to have access to this service. And if you sign up with the link down below, you're going to get 4 months free. So kind of a no-brainer if you're looking for a VPN. Again, I'm always connected on this, and it also allows you to browse other, Netflix shows or whatever the case may be in different countries, or as you're traveling, you can always be back home using your own VPN. So check those out if you are interested. The links are in the description. But that's going to be it for my crypto view in the next few days and weeks. If you are new here, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button. The Christmas tree right over here is back in action. That's your bullish signal for December. And with that said, I'll catch you guys in my next video. Peace.